Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if the lost fox came home, and nothing in Konoha was ever the same again? Episode 2. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, Naruto's return is already creating ripples throughout Konoha, and the secrets he brought back with him are beginning to surface. Now, let's start. Ocean off waves. This is as far as I can take you, Peru spoke as they surfaced, parting and allowing those within to exit harmlessly. We planned as much. Naruto spoke, stepping onto the ocean so casually, one might forget that they were at sea, before making a number of shadow clones to carry each member save for Hinoka, who insisted on carrying her own with the male blonde states. Thank you again for your help, Peru. You saved us a bunch of time and prevented us from putting the guppies in danger. All the better then. Until next time, Naruto. Peru offered before puffing away, no doubt to report her mission success. Looking forward toward the horizon, they could clearly see wave not far off, so it was safe to say no more than an hour or so before they got there. Land of waves. Stepping onto the sand, they group sighed, finally safe for now, yet Naruto continued on with a soft smile as he slowly turned back to his group, then announced. Welcome to the land of waves. My first conquest. With a proud smile upon his face as he begins to lead them towards the post, Kyoto asked while folding her arms loosely. Oh, yeah, Naruto whispered with melancholy looks upon the bridge in the distance, he added. This is the place I learnt what true strength is, what shinobi sacrifice in this world of hatred. Looking to his son and his adopted kids, speaking firmly. It's something I had forgotten briefly but was reminded about it by my other half. Rubbing his wedding ring, Naruto spoke. So take this to heart, true strength comes to those who are trying to protect those who love. This earned contemplative looks upon the looks of the young ones. Starry eyes from Kyoto and Shuren, though a soft smile from Hinoka, who nodded at that. In the town, Naruto was greeted by the older generation, who were all smiles as he smiled back as he reached the Ulmon's house. A knock on the door of a very familiar house, and a very familiar lady opened the door to find herself smiling at who stood before her. Well, isn't this a surprise? Tsunami, how have you been? Naruto asks with a soft smile, but Tsunami was swift in her response. Well, come in. She then ushered the group in and then noticed the advancing state of one Kyoto, 6 months along, and grew concerned. Naruto would never bring trouble to her, but this is clearly a new situation that required her touch, gaining her a smile. Arriving to the table with a tea in hand, Tsunami finishes pouring her own as she joined the others, then she asked gracefully. Naruto, you came for a reason, no? Not that I believe you would only visit for a reason, so don't pout like that, she was quick to add, noticing his expression, as said man removed his growing frown, Naruto whispering back. You're scary, you know that. Era, the older civilian woman with a slight flushed tint to her cheeks, Tsunami free hand cupping her face. Your praise is always welcomed. A growing smile that caused Kyoto and Hinoka to sweat dropped, though they both also noticed Naruto was nervous. Very nervous. He was recalling how close Shizuka and Tsunami had grown as they often visited Wave and stayed with the old family. At this point they were family too. Shizuka had taken tips and such from the older woman, which is why he always felt so nervous around this woman despite being an S-class shinobi in his own right. She damn right terrified him. Papa was wondering if we could stay here for a little bit. Shuren taking up the attention of the room, he knew just how much his father felt about his auntie Tsunami, who smiled softly at him as she announced. Well, of course. It's been so quiet around here lately. Sighing at that, Tsunami continued. Since my father died, Kami bless his soul, and Inari moved in with his wife, I've been a little lonely. Her smile was quick to return upon looking between the blondes and continued. I've missed my godchildren. You are always welcome here, Naruto. Looking from the younger than to the older, Naruto speaking up with a smile. Thank you, Tsunami. Then looking to his son and instructing. Go show everyone to their rooms. You can use any room besides my own. Inari has taken all his own stuff and my father, Tsunami added but trails off for Naruto to take up her hand at her side. He speaks lowly. It's fine. Earning a smile in return as everyone steps out, following Shuren up the stairs in silence. Now alone, Naruto and Tsunami sat with their beverage in hand. I'm sure you're wondering where the girls are. Naruto broke their silence calmly. Finishing her sipping, Tsunami swallowed then confirmed. But she did tell me there was a chance of this happening. She then added as she looks to him. Which is why I didn't push th issue. I see. Naruto breathed out hard at that, before whispering. I was unsure but as you can see, we can't really move too fast with our current company. You aren't cheating on Shu-chan, are you Naru-chan? Tsunami asked with a smile so sweet. Honeybees would get sick causing Naruto to go pale, a certain snake Sanin would look tanned. Naruto choked on his tea, coughing and wheezing. No, never, it's just. He takes a second to break the flustered state he was in, then replying firmly. She's a fellow Nadeshiko. Her mission went belly up and according to the rules and traditional, she would have been banished at best. This time he couldn't finish but earned a nod and a smile from Tsunami who replied. After all these years, you still have the habit of rescuing those in need. Can't help it. This hero damn complex, Naruto growled at himself before downing his tea, earning a soft chuckle from one of his oldest friends. That night Naruto slowly opened his eyes and saw a figure moving in through the darkness, but felt no malice, no hesitation, only wariness. A cold wariness which told him exactly who this was. He lifted the blanket and the figure slipped in. They were clothed, and nothing would happen as both were married to others, but this was a comfort she would only be afforded whilst he was here. She would not pass it up. 2 weeks. That's how long it took for Inari to finally notice our presence with his mother. He introduced his family, his wife and daughter, and Naruto would ruffle his hair saying how proud he was of him. They shared stories whilst Kyoto and Hinoka spoke with Yukiji, the daughter of a nearby village fisherman. Shuren and company were playing with their daughter as Tsunami brought in a massive lunch, and a small party unfolded before anyone knew it. After hearing about the situation, Inari discreetly spread the word among the townsmen and the local settlements to prevent anyone from speaking about the hero's return with his family. He also noticed that his mother seemed to be in high spirits, an extra spring in her step, which caused him to stare at his brother in all but blood with narrowed eyes. A cold glare from his mother stayed his actions however, and he knew his brother could very well smack him into next week if he accidentally angered his mother. 3 months later. The cries of a baby broke the silence as the Uzumaki group crowded around the door until the door parted and Naruto appeared with a smile announcing. It's a girl. The cheers and the following party echoed through the night. Naruto would sit all night at Kyoto's side, sitting sentry, whilst holding the newest member of their group, Koki. The baby was almost a splitting image of her mother, though her nose was definitely from that bastard, ears too, though it was too early to judge the rest. He looked out the window and could see the lights, hear the cheers and the laughs from the group's members. His whispered words. Just another happy day, in paradise, huh? The only words he would speak until dawn, helping keep the baby calm, fed and changed effortlessly and allowing the exhausted mother to rest fully without worry. His thoughts however were on their next step. Hoping over to the whirlpool chain of islands would be dangerous, but the safer option is he could turn the tides off and on using the hand signs his mother had showed him. The downside however was that their arrival might trigger a silent alarm in the hidden leaf, if not having an ambush stationed the area already. On the other hand, if they went straight to Hot Spring Country, They could resupply then move on the disrupted island then go on to Kami no Kuni before moving on to Sky then perhaps take the long journey through bird then forest and vegetable leaving a straight shot back to Demon. It was straightforward plan but keeping so close to Fire Country would allow their enemies to track them, intercept them at some places and perhaps an ambush when they resupply. Then he would have to hold them at bay, whilst resupplying, then go on trying to slip away from them. He sighed. Going back to our roots would be the better choice. Really. Naruto didn't show it, but he was surprised that Kyoto was up already and yawning widely, her dark gray eyes slightly glassy and disorderly. It was just before dawn though, so maybe she had rested enough. Naruto smiled softly, speaking beneath a breath. Yeah, it's the best idea. I don't think there's much of a choice. He then handed over the baby to her mother, who lit up in glee upon seeing her snoozing little bundle of joy, whispering back softly. I trust you. Kyoto then looking back up at Naruto, smiling blissfully before informing. You are far more experienced than me as my senpai. Earning a smile from the blonde who gave her a half hug, that filled her with a comforting warmth and a sense of blissful homeliness he gave. Hidden Leaf. The council was in full attendance. New news had arrived that promised a change to the status quo that they had found themselves in, and so the blonde cage roared. Silence. She earned as such as her sharpened eyes glance around. Taking a second to get her breathing level, Tsunade continues. We have confirmed, through our alliance, that Rice and their hidden village are in a state of civil war. This earned amused smiles and chatter as that basically meant that the Sound were no longer in a position to fight, which meant that only the Stone, and maybe Cloud, left to threaten them. The cage continued. With that said, our forces have stepped up their training and are prepared to defend our remaining fronts. Lady Hokage, spoke up another random councilman. Earning a nod they spoke up. We have received word that a larger group of our trackers were dispatched towards the southern border with noodles. Can we ask why? We had received word that a suspicious individual was scouting out the coastline. In the current climate, I decided to be proactive and ensure that our enemies failed to gain any foothold. Tsunade responded casually, clearly hiding their true intent. None needed to know they failed to track down a lone shinobi, or that said shinobi had children with him. Small murmurs as discussions broke out, but just as Tsunade begins to wrap up, the elders spoke. Tsunade, any word about our missing Jinchuriki? Hamura had questioned, causing the room fall as silent as a crypt. It didn't last. We don't need that monster. Is it not dead? Send the hunters to finish it. Send the Anbu, make sure it's dead for sure. Silence. Tsunade roared while unleashing her potent killing intent that caused more than a few civilians to leak between their legs. Upon regaining the attention of the room, she continued. Naruto Uzumaki has been sighted several times, however, Jiraiya has his spies out in force, yet we have no leads on his current location. Have we swept through any known locations he is welcomed? Shikaku asks while yawning as his hand supporting his head. Wave, T, Spring. We've dispatched 2 recon teams, but nothing has turned up. Unfortunately, we cannot afford to act careless with Kumo breathing down our necks. Tsunade clarifies, to which he nods back. What we do know, however, is that he had been operating in the land of water at some point. Then he's a traitor. One councilman yells, only to be hit by the collective killing intent of the clan council and the cage. The poor bastard's heart failed him. We believed he fought in their civil war extensively. Tsunade hissed before she clarifies. Jiraiya has uncovered a few of his monikers, such as the 8th Blade of Kiri, 8th Swordsman of the Mist, and Hero of Fang and Wave. He also has ties to the Water Daimyo along with Spring, Grass, and Wind. She had listed off, causing many eyes to widen. One random counselor muttered, "Isn't that half the?" Yes. Tsunade confirms, her gaze sweeping as she added. He has been very busy. That can't be true. Another councilman murmurs within the silence. This, however, is only the tip of the iceberg. Jiraiya says, appearing into the center of the room, the smoke from his arrival dispersing swiftly, gaining in the room's full attention. The spy master continued. He has been working in the shadows during several conflicts, cutting their lengths down noticeably, and then vanishing with his partner. Partner? Tsunade questioned, having not heard that before, causing Jiraiya to shrug, speaking up. They never gave their names. What I have heard though, she was a beautiful kunoichi with raven black hair, brilliant green eyes and a well-toned figure. Is she? Yes. I believe that she is also the mother of his child. Jiraiya reveals, causing the air itself to tense. That demon had a spawn. One random councilman asks, causing the white-maned man to growl and glare at the man. We know he has a son, around 7 or 8, and is traveling somewhere around. Where? I don't know. He spoke, cutting off their responses in their throat. Jiraiya continued briskly. But last we heard was on Nagi Island. Since then, he went dark again. What was he doing on Nagi Island? We suspect it was a mission, or a base of some kind. Jiraiya appeared to be talking to himself in questions before a throat clearing brought him back to the room. He chuckled nervously. Right, anyway, what I do know is that he seemed to have purchased a bunch of children from a smuggler. Seeing the anger and shouts of indignation forming, both Sannin raised their hands to stall their outbursts. Jiraiya added, it was at the behest of Sun, then, knowing him, freed them and now moving with them, but they haven't shown up. How is that possible? Shibi questioned. The Toad Sage just shrugged at that, as he didn't know those Shikaku offered. He's always been sneaky. Before Inoichi nodded, then added. He's gotten better. Clearly. Jiraiya responded flatly. Tsunade then announced. Then, we have to send out search parties. Yes, find the boy and we can restore the Uzumaki clan back here in Konoha. Danzo announced, cutting off the Hokage, causing murmurs to rise within the room, only for a potent blast of killing intent stunning them all. Among the sweat and fear, they all managed to look to its source, Tsunade, who spoke tightly. I sure hope you mean you wish to recover Naruto, and not his son, right? The silence was telling. Land of waves. Naruto and Shuren finished their sneezes, causing the room to look at them, with the latter looking confused, former with narrowed eyes, but it was pale-haired Amano who asked. What was that? She had since grown rather outspoken after her level of comfort had grown to a cordial. Hinoka smirked, almost coyly asked smoothly. Someone talking about you. Naruto nods firmly once. More than likely, yes. The blonde states in his now focused, narrow dark blue eyes. I don't get sick due to other factors. You haven't told them. Hinoka whispered, to which Naruto shook his head softly, whispering. Too young for it. He sighs before muttering. Feel like a hypocrite. Anyway, we'll be here for another week or so before we move on. We have to be ready to move. What about me and Koki? Kyoto questioned, still eating said baby on the sofa. Naruto looked to her, face stern, as he informed. You will be carried. The Greynet nodded carefully, so Naruto turning to the group, who all nod, with Shuren asking. Where we going next, Dad? Either hot spring or. Naruto trailed off, his response to the door opened and a panicked cry. Ni-chan, I got a ship to take you to Sky Country. Inari announced, causing the Uzumaki patriarch to smile. Finally some good news. Thanks, Inari. I owe you one for that. Nah, it's fine, Inari waving him off as he accepted a kiss from his mum. Thanks. Then, we'll leave the day after tomorrow. Okay. None would know that day would be the day that world would finally understand what an Uzumaki father could do when backed against a wall. The day the Hidden Leaf would understand the depths of their mistakes and the folly of their actions. The Konoha 10 would understand exactly the darkness of the shinobi world, at the behest of the Black Blade of Nadeshiko origin. Hidden Leaf. In a briefing room within the Hokage Tower stood Naruto's graduating class, known by most as the Konoha 10, previously 12, but the banishment of Naruto and abandonment of Sasuke had reduced their numbers. They were joined by a Jonin and Chunin teams, raising their number up to 24 shinobi, standing before their Hokage and her former teammate Jiraiya. Thank you all for coming so swiftly. Tsunade speaking to break the silence of the room. We have a priority mission for you all. One of my contacts have located the former genin Naruto Uzumaki and his party in Wave Country. Jiraiya announces, earning the entire attention of the former Rookie 12, Tenten voicing her inquiry. Naruto. He made it clear. Tsunade raised her hand to stall the protest, stating flatly. We need him back. It is far too dangerous for him and us to allow our enemies to try and tempt him to their sides. He's our Jinchuriki, right? Shikamaru states with an underlying tone of steel that matched his narrowed eyes. Tsunade didn't flinch at the unsaid accusations of the Nara heir, adding. We also have reason to believe he is traveling with his son. No doubt he'll be an easy target and weakness. We must protect them both at any cost. This actually has the opposite effect, as the Nara actually growled at the underlying message, Shikamaru muttering lowly and beneath a breath. What are you trying to say, exactly? He began stepping forward, but the two Sannin remained blank-faced as the Nara clan heir asks further. Are trying to capture him, or? Jonin Nara. Your mission is to retrieve Naruto Uzumaki and return him to the Hidden Leaf Village. Tsunade orders firmly, burying her own feelings on the subject. Yes ma'am. Kenji, the leader of the Jonin squad, declared, saluting his cage before leaving along with the other regular Chunin. The Konoha 10 all looked to Shikamaru, who nodded at them, and all vanished in body flickers as he glances back to his cage, with parting words as he too vanishes in a vortex of leaves. This is a mistake. Letting out a deep breath, Tsunade hangs her head with watery eyes, whispering. I know it is, but. A hand on her shoulder, an offer of comfort from her oldest friend, drawing her water-laden eyes to Jiraiya, who said. It'll be okay, Suheim. This is Naruto we are talking about. What's the worst that could happen? Jiraiya would later come to regret those words, as he too decided to provide backup, saying. I'll go keep watch, just in case, okay. And upon her nod he smiles before vanishing in a plume of smoke. Land of Waves. The next day, Naruto and Tsunami would make breakfast along with Inari, and the entire family spent the morning together. As one big family. The atmosphere was cozy, and even Kyoto was sitting peacefully, Koka sleeping in arm, and was doing far better, having recovered from the birth of her daughter. Hinoka was reading a book of journeyman-level ceiling, Shuren peeking over her shoulder every now and then. Naruto had just finishing cleaning his sword when a knock on the door broke the peaceful air. Inari answered the door, a brief exchange, and his happy mood evaporated, earning the full attention of the adults, with Naruto moving forward. Thanks. Tell them to get ready now. Inari then closes the door as he turns to his brother in all but blood and informed. Naruto ni. We have trouble. Explain. One of the cooks in the bar was caught giving information to a toad yesterday by his wife. Inari states with a frown. This sent alarms to the eldest Uzumaki present, Naruto announced coldly, sharply, and with a very dangerous undertone. We have to leave. This caused the others to straighten up stiffly, with Inari nodding, then announcing. The ship is almost finished preparing. I suggest you all get there now. The whole town will work to get it away as soon as possible. We'll be there in a few. Naruto confirmed, then turns back to the room as a whole, allowing Inari slipping out as he does, and is faced with the hardened gaze of his kids, who despite being so young looked ready for action. It was both a prideful moment but a sense of guilt, as he never wanted this for them, but for now it helps, as he orders. Listen up. We're moving out in 5 minutes. Gear up. Hi. They all chorus, and the 6 children rush off as he approaches the young mother and clansmen, Naruto ordering. Hinoka, stay with Kyoto and defend the group from afar. Your sole objective is defense. Protect our family please. His tone was no better than pleading at this point, and Hinoka hugged him on instinct, whispering, "Consider it done. You've done so much for me already. I will save our family. Thank you." He whispered as they broke apart. He looks to the baby and her mother, eyes still soft but firm. Naruto added, "Stay back with the kids. Your sole objective is to protect yourself and your daughter. Let us deal with the enemy." "I can, Kyoto." Naruto cutting off her protest, forcing her eyes to his as he continued, "Please. You aren't fully recovered yet. Koko-chan needs her mother, now more than ever. Don't let her down." His soft tone was unfair in Kyoto's honest opinion, as she was forced to simply nod and accept sitting out this battle. The docks were a bustle of activity. Of the 3 ships tied up there, only one was being made ready for sail. The crews of the others helping move supplies and conduct any outstanding repairs at the behest of the dock master. This is what Naruto arrived to, his party being ushered towards the final dock. Just as they reached the final pier, the whole area froze. They all paused, as this is when the hidden leaf shinobi land all around the docks, atop buildings and crates, and in a half circle around their target and his party. They intend to capture them all, and this transmitted that fact. All activities ceased momentarily, broken by one of the leaf jonin approaching Naruto, who promptly pulls a set of kunai out whilst ensuring his family was shielded behind him, as he held a defensive stance. The man then announced, "Naruto Uzumaki." The kids also took defensive stances, swords and kunai, as they slowly and carefully backed up. Hinoka too was preparing her chakra chains whilst keeping an eye on Naruto's blind spots. Kyoto may have promised to keep herself on the rear line, but she'd be damned if she wouldn't at least provide fire support with her kunai. Holding her daughter close against her chest, she holds 3 kunai in her free hand whilst watching out in case of an encirclement. Despite all of this, the random leaf jonin continued, eyes not leaving his blonde target before him, as he informed him. "By the order of the joint councils, Lady Hokage, and the Fire Daimyo's court, you are hereby ordered to return to the village for reintroduction as a leaf shinobi." Silence would have followed had the ship crews not returned to unhooking the ship. Naruto remained motionless, eyes fixed on the ninja before him, but his senses began to expand as nature energy began to fill him. This allowed him to count all 25 enemies. Yes, he did pick up that disgrace of a Sannin hiding in the rear, but was slowly working his way round towards to his back. Toward his family. Naruto flung out 2 kunai to the side, that exploded on impact, forcing the Toad Sage into view and out of the shadows. He then glanced back to the kids, ordering them, "Get to the ship." His sage marks then fade into view, eyes flowing orange slit, reminiscent of a certain fox's. All the leaf shinobi misread this and assumed he was entering his Jinchuriki cloak to confront them, thus his denial to follow their instructions to return, and thus charged. A certain sage called out but was ignored. Wait. Naruto did not want to fight. His family was behind him, their protection was his most paramount concern, and thus was hoping to escape before this conflict could happen. Surely he has matured since his exile. His better halves have done wonders on his psyche and turned him into a more mannered and forward-thinking man. This translated into his fighting naturally, not wanting to cause too much damage in this fighting retreat. He needed enough power to fight against a numerical superior enemy whilst maintaining the precision to work between allies and non-combatants. Subsequently, this eliminated Kurama's chakra, as it is corrosive to everything that wasn't him, and to some extent his blood, so sage mode it is. As an added bonus, this also enabled him to keep track of everything around him with perfect clarity, as if held the eyes of a Hyuga. This meant he was fully aware of the fact his former classmates were among the attacking force. This meant he would have to lock away his excess thoughts and emotions, as again he didn't want to cause unnecessary damage, but his family is his priority, thus cannot hesitate here. This was also the reason he went for kunai in place of his sword. Quicker defensive action can be attained with them and far easier to incapacitate instead of killing outright. This way he won't be hunted by the Leaf as a rogue ninja, even if his isn't one of them anymore, and is classed as a Ronin, or mercenary shinobi. It will cause more issues politically when word gets out. This will no doubt begin to put pressure and attention on the family as a whole. So with a steady heart, eyes void of anything but action, Naruto Uzumaki countercharged in defense of his precious family against this familiar enemy. Battle of the Waves. With speed the Leaf forces didn't predict he had, Naruto kicked the first Jonin dead center. The sound of his ribs cracking could be heard, and with his Sage Chakra enhancing his strength. This blasted the man back clean through a building at the rear. Without missing a beat, Naruto slid to a stop within the man's squad and swirled like a tornado. The three Chunin got their legs cut open before a blast of wind knocked them aside. Rising to his feet, Naruto spoke lowly, though the wind carried his words as if commanded to, in order to force all those nearby to hear. This is my only warning. Leave now, or I will treat you all as hostiles along with all the rights affording the title. A shaky silence as many gulps were had. A stillness that was broken by the brashes of people. Fang over fang. Two twisters came flying from both sides of the blonde, causing him to glance both ways, but before they could hit. Bang! Both Kiba and Akamaru found themselves at the receiving end of a drop kick, face first into a crater, no one able to tell the real from the clone of Naruto as they stand over each of the new holes. Both Naruto's growl, deep and menacingly, glancing up at the preparing shinobi, their gaze sweeping, with the original grunting. Fine. Have it your way. His clone adds as it joins the glare with its creator at the remaining 20, both speaking so coldly his former friends couldn't believe this was their knuckle-headed ninja. Shortly, swarms of bugs cloud the sky, enough to block out the sun, charging towards the two blondes that began to go through hand signs that none of his former classmates knew he knew, but watched as they both taking deep breaths. Naruto and his clone both spoke internally their technique's name. Vacuum style, void sphere. Together they both spit out a barrage of compressed air bullets around a void of nothing. Upon contact with the swarm, the blasts erupt into razor-sharp spikes of wind blades that shred the bugs in seconds. A volley of kunai then shredded through the air, forcing Naruto and his clone duck and weave around it, using their own weapons and enhanced agility to avoid the sharp storm of kunai. Though he did take a few nicks and the like, his armor did not give out on him. The razor-sharp barrage abruptly halted, just as his whole body became rigid in a familiar feeling and predictably he heard. Cage main, success. A glance around showed Naruto the approach of 4 Hyuga move into striking range, as well as a big-boned Akamichi preparing to apprehend him. 2 of the Hyuga however went after the group at the rear with their intent darkening. Naruto noticing this and just as both sets of Hyuga enter their stances, the 2 Uzumaki broke out their own clan techniques, the Uzumaki sealing chains. Thus, without warning 5 chains erupted from Naruto's back, one speared directly into the dirt beneath disrupting the shadow paralysis, breaking the Nara's hold on him and caused a gobsmacked Nara to trip up in confusion. The 4 other chains wrapped up the Hyuga heir and her cousin, at speeds they didn't know existed, discovering that their chakra had sealed immediately upon contact with these restraints. Both were abruptly lifted into the air before being slammed into the dirt in short order. The Uzumaki turned to see both Hyuga who had passed him by, suffering a similar fate as Hinoka's near 20 chains over around with force subduing the 2 aggressors. Daimanic entry was yelled and Naruto, thinking even quicker, moved the 2 Hyuga still in his chained grasp into the way. That collision was not pretty at all, the Chunin muttered. How unyouthful. Darting aside, Naruto came face to face with another barrage of sharpened pointed weapons, yet he confronted them without flinching at the sight as his chains shot forward in defense and began knocking the standard issue weapons aside with little effort. Their master abruptly flips over the grasping giant hand that attempted to grab him, but two of his chains wrap around the giant appendage, that was promptly crushed by them, and Naruto himself took up the defensive kunai deflection duty. Upon landing he glances around briefly to judge his spacing, just in time to block a high kick from a green spandex wearing Chunin. Said shinobi was about to open his mouth to talk, but Naruto was having none of that, stepping into his guard and landed two jabs, that felt like a rhino stomped upon him each, then a knee to the gut, that lifted him from the ground, despite the added weights he always wore, and before he dropped down he was grabbed by his arms and flung out across the ocean. Another situation check and he watches Hinoka's chains dismantle two fireballs with ease, Amano firing her bow at the Nara, backing up Kyoto, who was reloading, on the building not too far off and forcing his shadow to retreat. Suddenly his danger sense, honed after years of conflict, triggered, forcing the blonde to leap clear to find none other than the toad sage Jiraiya with a suppression seal in hand. That was close. Whilst mid-flip in the air, Naruto notices that Kyoto and the kids were aboard. The sailors were pushing off, but the Akamichi was standing in front holding it down. He'll have to be dealt with. As he lands, a seamless shadow clone appeared briefly, vanishing in the next mind-body switch Naruto heard, and it only took 2 seconds to recognize the technique, track its launch position, the transmitted soul, and deduce the intended target. Hinoka. His eyes hardened as he stood from his crouch, ignoring his fellow sage's monologue completely, and launched towards the clashing shinobi on the dockway. Incoming, was called out and those ahead turned to see the blonde, blank-faced and glaring, rushing them. But before their weapons clashed, Naruto kicked off the ground, leaping up and caught the mind of one Yamanaka Ino, before it reached his cousin who has no solid defense against such an attack. Naruto's mindscape. Ino landed on a beach front, Superman style, the tree line was thick ahead and the water a vibrant blue behind her. Looking around she notices how rough the sea seemed, and the sun was out but offered no warmth for her as she finally noticed the small seafront house further down the shore of this bay. Running across the hot white sand, she reaches the house, more like mansion, and enters it carelessly with Ino muttering. This must be where his consciousness resides. She stepping in finds a very comfortable villa, an open-plan kitchen into this living area, comfortable-looking sofas surrounding a tea table. An unused fireplace sat beneath a flat-screen television. As soon as the door shuts she hears it lock behind her. Stunned, Ino tries to yank it open and failing miserably. Abruptly a voice called out from behind her, stunning her. That won't work. The intruding mindwalker swirls around on the balls of her feet to find a man, standing 6'6", bright red hair and eyes, wearing a fluffy white nightgown and slippers. He looked like he was just awoken from a nap of some kind, which makes no sense from her point of view, yet he just strolls around like he owns the place. Ino thus asks, "Who are you? You're not that girl." "Girl?" the man asks with a raised brow, which is when Ino noticed the crimson slit eyes and 8 whisker marks on his cheeks, which reminds her of only one person she knew, thus she asks, "Naruto?" She clearly unsure about whether it was a question or a statement. The man drops down on the sofa with a low chuckle, reaching for the popcorn and remote that Ino swore wasn't there a second ago as he snorted. "You wish." This caused the hairs on the young mind-walker's neck to stand on edge, Ino whispering beneath a breath. Then, "Who, or where am? Just sit down and watch. This should be good. The kid very rarely gets this serious these days." The man states as he kicks his feet up on the black marble low table, smirking that shows his elongated teeth and feral nature of the man that glances at her, mirth dancing within his scarlet gaze as he continued. "So, kick back and enjoy it. Battle of Wave, Engagement 2. Naruto lands in a crouch among the whipping chains of his clansmen, everything else just stopped and watched as he slowly raises to his feet. Glancing back over his shoulder, he took notice of the eagle eye on him from a certain Nara currently supporting his friend's limp body. No doubt wondering who's in control and if his plan worked. His narrowing glare told him the outcome. He also took note that the Leaf forces are being tended to by both the pink-haired and the Hyuga medic with midnight hair and rejoining the battle. Looking forward, he saw Dog Boy was now hounding the kids, who have drawn their weapons in defense of Kyoto, and 2 other shinobi were rounding up the sailors to prevent them from setting off. Clearly trying to preserve life and only knocking them out has not worked. Their medical personnel are just waking them, patching them up and sending them back into the fight. A deep breath is taken, the air shifts noticeably, and the blank glint is replaced with cold indifference. Every single veteran shinobi sensed this, as his intent before then had been empty and lacked anything that could be considered hostile. That, however, has now changed. His entire presence was now screaming danger, forcing those nearby to leap clear from the patiently standing shinobi swordsman. Naruto slowly, carefully, methodically, and somehow menacingly pulls out his black katana on his back. Its scraping against its scabbard somehow felt like a death sentence to all whom earned its wielder's wrath. With that done, Naruto whispered into the wind so lowly, you may have mistaken it for a passing breeze. Hinoka. The woman addressed straightened up immediately, listening to her leader's words that followed promptly. Defend the kids. This change of instruction may not sound like much to the common folk, but to those keen on tactical games and procedures know the difference between the stances of protection and defense. Hinoka's black eyes seemed to become pools of void, nothing within them but a cold detachment from the material world. And her chains also reflected this, as they were so calmly swaying in an imaginary wind a moment ago but abruptly become stock still for a moment. The next they became coiled rattlesnakes, ready to strike. Another deep breath followed by a dense exhale. The natural energy-laced chakra seemed to explode out of him, radiating out that forced those against him to leave or face its wrath. Naruto's eyes narrow on the enemy before him, counting positions, locations, roles, and required actions needed. All within the space of a second, all 20 enemies ahead of him were marked. Hinoka will handle the others. He takes a single step and the air grew tense, but with the step following after, he was gone. Those on the gangway were swiftly sliced in half, before they even realized they were dead. Those left were helpless but watched as Jiraiya abruptly appeared before the Hyuga medic. A shockwave of razor wind and chakra exploding out, forcing eyes to be covered brightly. Looking back, the sage's armored bracers had been cut into lightly despite the natural chakra flowing over them as he was forced down to a knee from the sheer amount of force used in that downward slash. The sound of a building crumbling drew many eyes to the cut-through warehouse behind the Toad Sage, causing a shocked gasp from the Hyuga heiress who was the original target, currently in the old Jonin's shadow. Her eyes wide in fear. Jiraiya had gritted teeth as he looked up at his former student, his blank face revealing nothing to read, and just as he was about to speak, he finds a roundhouse kick knocking him aside. He flew directly into the path of a flung Kiba Inuzuka, who himself had 2 puncture holes in his side. Hinata watched as Naruto continued his spin, with his sword coming for her neck, and was frozen in terror that she was about to be killed by her Naruto-kun. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Drew the attention to her cousin, Neji, who was already in stance and posture to strike. Naruto, knowing this move as every Hyuga fights the same, and thus did not even flinch at the prospect of this clash. Sakura tackled Hinata down, beneath the arching Ode katana, that was promptly pulled into a defense position as the Hyuga Jonin began his attack. Naruto's defense held a strange beauty to it, his sword was a blur to most, as Neji's finger thrusts met its flat end regardless of how fast he moved. Just as he reached the final set, however, his Byakugan watched his opponent's chakra form into a seal-less shadow clone that appeared on his left and moved to strike. Luckily for him, his teammate Tenten appeared and parried the strike set to bisect him. Suitably distracted on the clash, Neji almost missed the roundhouse Naruto himself launched from his right. His guard was not prepared for the truckload of a strike that Naruto called a kick, thus his block crumbled under its strength. Twirling into Tenten, Neji barely escaped the slash from the clone, though he did not escape unharmed as Naruto's follow-up slash him down his chest and left leg. It wasn't dangerous enough to be life-threatening, but certainly debilitating and enough to keep him out the fight any further or risk death. Sensing the danger, Tenten too attempted to disengage, but the clone was pushing her down to her knee. The shadow over her caused her heart to skip a beat, as his sword was being ousted lower and lower, tears pooling in her eyes as the blank-faced Naruto. Death by a friend, echoed in her mind. That was until the clone abruptly went poof. The clone suddenly dispersed, in its place was a swarm Kikachu bugs humming above her and Neji. Tenten was in tears, having seen her death in that moment, by a former friend no less. Landing on another unnamed Chunin, sword through his gut, Naruto raises to his feet again gracefully, pulling his sword from the gut as he stepped towards the runway down the docks again. Though, with never-before-seen reflexes, Naruto cuts through two flung kunai, and their explosive tags, before spinning on his heel and clashing blade of his katana against the grinding edge of Jiraiya's Odama Rasengan. The Toad Sage continued to push deeper, harder, with more power pushed into the technique, but the blade Naruto is using wasn't standard issue in Nadeshiko until he joined them after his wedding. His high level of mastery of his clan's expertise has only gotten better since then, and his gift to his new home were these black katanas that resonates with the chakra of their wielder and only their wielders. Right now, Naruto's nature-enhanced, dense Uzumaki chakra was following the will of its owner to protect his family. At this point, nothing could or would break his blade, and so no matter how much power was being used, Jiraiya had hit the proverbial unmovable object. Thus, Naruto knew he would be fine, but needed to cut off his opponent's strength, which was rather straightforward in this case, causing his chains to erupt from his back once more in anger and shot out in a wide arch around the clash. Behind, Jiraiya boy came too late as three chakra chains slammed into his side, two chipped off his sage chakra enhanced armor and the final punching into his side. Immediately Jiraiya's sage mode shuts off, the Toad Elders ejected from his persons, and suddenly the Rasengan he had been maintaining was sliced through in short order by the black blade, cut clean in half and explodes around Naruto, who was shielded by his sage cloak. The resultant rush of wind pushing the ship out to sea from the shockwave. Before anything else, the Toad Sage is heard muffling his pain as he looks down at the severed forearm of his right dominant arm. A perfect cut. Looking up at the slit dull orange eyes of his former student, it is then he realizes their initial error and murmured, "Fox Sage." Naruto suddenly jumps back, avoiding the explosive gloved fist of his old teammate, Sakura Haruno, who up until now has been on medic support but can't take sitting this out any longer. Naruto is her teammate. She'll be the one to bring him in even if she has to break every bone in his body. Skirmish 7. The Waves dockyard had finally been evacuated. Hinoka had leapt onto the departing ship and acting as the defender whilst Naruto was acting as rear guard. The Leaf forces had been beaten back, forcefully, but now the last loyal member of Team 7 was confronting her banished counterpart. Since their last meeting, Sakura has had a complete turnaround in attitude which has ultimately altered her way of thinking about the past interactions with her fellow members of Team 7. She will admit, in private and with her inner circle, that her treatment of Naruto was appalling. His heart was always in the right place, and not once ever truly stepped out of line, which made the face he made of her betrayal of him hurt all the more. It caused many sleepless nights, though did wonders in her training, and now here she is, the object of her obsession, cutting through their fellow Leaf Shinobi with a face so cold, so lacking its normal overwhelming sunshine. Sakura growled, taking up her stance, similar to her master, before bellowing, What the hell are you doing, you baka? Naruto Uzumaki, of Nadeshiko, used to be rather naive and beloved that ninjas were the ultimate force of right in the world. The bad ones just needed to be beat down and then reminded of precious people to become good again. How stupid he was back then. The first time he clashed against Yagura was by pure chance. The two clashed out at sea, and this was also the first time he and Kurama worked together, upon the latter noticing something wrong with his little brother. The second time, the two clashed, and during the fight Yagura openly went out of his way to cause death and destruction in mass, destroying innocent people who were trying to run. The evil in his cackle enraged both he and his beast, Kurama knowing full well that Isobu was the calmest and most gentle of them all. He knew this was wrong. Someone was using his brother's power against his nature. The battle ended shortly after that in a completely one-sided beatdown, of the viciously feral type, as it was proven again that Kurama, even when split in half, is still the strongest tailed beast. That was only one example of the cruelty of man. The massacre of the capital of Water Country, the innumerable slave rings he and Shizuka had broken up. The children. Nothing ever prepared him for that. Were it not for his wife, he is sure he'd have a much darker outlook on life. His slit eyes narrow to thin lines as he glares at his pink-haired opponent. The leaf was no different, as he has found more than a few of their fingerprints on these things despite their own self-riotousness that he was force-fed growing up. After all, Hinoka being proof of this. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that they need him. For the Nine Tails, his son is a replacement for him. His clansman to breed more Uzumaki, as only one of his clan members can hold out against the dense, corrosive chakra of the strongest beast. Not happening. All these thoughts happened as Sakura made her declaration, which also brought him back to the task at hand and how to block the Leaf's attempt at gaining power at his family's expense. His eyes responded to that as they narrow completely, to thin lines as his body tenses, adrenaline production skyrockets, heart rate increases, and his chakra coils ripple in anticipation of the fight. All this was seen by the remaining shinobi as he was ready to attack, including his former pink-haired comrade, who was surprised at the reaction to her question, the guilt swelling within her, but before she could voice that, she ducks aside, then leaned from the follow-up slash. Jumping back, she noticed her side had been cut open. It was shallow and not a problem right now, but again she narrowly avoided a cut across the cheek, blood now dripping from it as she lunged forward with a fist. Naruto stepped aside, his opponent's air-shuddering punch, and the shockwave produced tore the air apart. The twirling swordsman continued to do so before slashing mid to ground. Sakura's back snap kick pulled the loose dirt behind the shockwave it caused. Naruto sliced up that leg as she jumped clear. Though it was followed by another slash that cut her medium-length hair down to her shoulder blades, her head barely moved out of range. Sakura throws wide hook. Naruto sped back, her follow-up jab deflected with the flat of his sword. The uppercut avoided, her kick avoided, but the shockwave ripped the fabric over his thighs, and a bruise forming in its place. He slides to the left, for the others saw the after image as he flat out dodged the snapped elbow strike from the medic, and then for anyone watching the two began to blur, but it was evident that it was one-sided. The growing slashes of blood on the floor created a rather gruesome sight that only highlighted a smacking sound as Sakura stumbled backwards, a handle embedded in the solar plexus forcing the med nin to her knees, coughing and wheezing, her blood leaking from the numerous shallow cuts that now littered her pale skin. What caused her breath to hitch, though, was the feel of cold hard steel on her neck. Her mind locked up. Naruto wouldn't. He wouldn't kill her. She's his Sakura-chan, right? Papa was called out, and the silence that followed was deafening. The med nin felt that she was awaiting judgment. For the sword to drop through her neck, for the transgressions against her old friend, yet for that moment that stretched on for an uncomfortable minute. The air fell still until the cold steel left. The sound of his combat boots against the ruined gravel was music to her ears as the pinkett who shakily looks up, again watching the back of her teammate walk away again, which broke her renewed will. Then he vanished in a twister of water and wind. She whispered, Naruto. Hidden leaf. A week later. As you all know, I dispatched a squadron of shinobi to the land of Wave, to retrieve one Naruto Uzumaki, our banished genin. Tsunade spoke, opening the council meeting, causing everyone to sit up straight. They had returned a few minutes ago, and of the 24, plus Jiraiya, only 15 returned under their own power, with the others were killed. Gasps came from the room, with Shikaku questioning, brow raised. He killed them. Shikamaru, who had just arrived for the debrief, stepped up. For the first half of combat, it was clear he was on the defensive and only countered our offensive actions, but as Kiba's team began to apprehend his kids, and Ino's attack was about to neutralize the other chain user. Chain user? Tsunade questioned, earning a nod from the only shinobi who attended the mission and could walk, Shikamaru informed. Naruto was using them too. He had 6 at one point, but she had about 24. That's an Uzumaki bloodline ability, solid chakra manipulation. Tsunade explained, earning nods from those who knew a certain redhead who used them too. It was one of the elders who spoke next, Danzo asking. So, he found another Uzumaki then. What can you tell us about her? His inquiry got him many raised brows from many, with Tsunade however narrowed her eyes instantly, knowing why he was curious about her. Shikamaru nodded and responded promptly. No forehead protector, stood at around 5'5", straight red hair, and black eyes. Used and manipulated chains to defend and attack. After Ino's attack, the two shared a word and they changed their attack plan offensively. So, you're saying they held back until they were cornered? Shikaku questioned, sitting forward. Inoichi follows suit with fingers interlocked. Shikamaru nods once before reporting. Yes. If we had attempted to negotiate at the beginning, instead of going in jutsu blazing, we might have been turned down, but at least we could have tried again, but seeing as we've proved a threat to his kids and clansmen. He trailed off, earning nods from the shinobi side, understanding what wasn't said, but earned a defeated sigh from the Hokage as she knew that now her little brother would not be allowed back, having killed Leaf Shinobi, Tsunade stating for the room. According to village rules, Naruto Uzumaki will placed in the bingo book as an S-rank threat. Retrieve on site. His son too. Danzo announces with an imperialist edge and tone, causing his fellow elders and civilian council to nod along with him in full agreement. Though, the Shinobi Council were far less enthused about such a move due to its very nature and the rules they would crossing. This act would cause 4 of the 5 nations to begin to lock them out, and willing to come to blows over the discussed shinobi, and his allegiance would be hotly debated. Many friends and foes will change sides, and things getting a little hot. Jiraiya sat on the edge of the medical bed, with Tsunade running tests to see if the reattachment of her teammate's arm was successful and to what degree. Sighing hard, Tsunade looks to her oldest friend and asks, "What happened out there?" Still flexing his limb, the Toad Sage responded airily. "Those shinobi you sent were overeager and jumped the gun. They straight up threatened the Gaki, then moved in on the Gaki's Gaki to try to take them as hostages to use against him." Tsunade sighed warily at that, shaking her head as she recalls how Uzumaki are similar to the Inuzuka on that sense, as both take the defense of their young above all else, so that was very much the wrong move. Nodding, Tsunade then asks, "Then what? Did you not?" Jiraiya stared at her blankly, speaking the same. "Did you know he had the chains?" Tsunade shook her head while replying, "I thought he wouldn't, as it's typically the women of the clan who get them." Jiraiya sighed, shaking his head, and stated, "He got me with them in the side," gesturing to the wounds she was patching up earlier and adding, "Forced me out of sage mode." Tsunade nods at that, saying in response, "Makes sense, though, I am also interested in this other Uzumaki. If 24 chains are her limit, then she is just below Naruto's mother. If we can get them back in the village together." Her teammates long, wary, drawn-out sigh, cut her off, and Jiraiya looks at her dead in the eye whilst saying, "I doubt he wants anything to do with us. Though, I will keep an eye out for things as I too want him here, but it will not be easy, Suheim." Tsunade nods minutely, a tight frown on her face while responding. "Still, how was he, health-wise?" Jiraiya chuckled lightly, as he looks down to his wrist again and replying, "If his fighting style is anything to go by, he's fine." Tsunade perked up, eyes locking on her teammate as she asks, "What kind of style is he using?" "Sword user." Jiraiya started and Tsunade grinned widely. Seems Naruto was taking after his mother in place of his father, despite the looks. Jiraiya, knowing what was going through his medic friend's mind, continued on. Though, he only brought his sword out when he was going for the kill. Before that he was using kunai like his dad was known for. Tsunade frowned while whispering, "So, what Shikamaru said was true. He wasn't going all out in the beginning." Jiraiya nods as he explained. "Yeah, his attacks were shallow but painful. Debilitating, but that was all." He sighed, before looking at his arm again and saying, "Then, when they cornered the kids, Naruto mumbled something to the redhead and they both changed." Jiraiya looked up at the serious visage of his Hokage and offered firmly, "Tsunade, if I wasn't there, Hinata Hyuga would be dead. His opening strike literally cut a building in half. I only managed to deflect it above the both of us." Tsunade was about to speak, but Jiraiya continued. "Then, he hit me with a roundhouse kick so damn hard, it was on your level of super punches and just as potent." The sage grumbled at the end, rubbing his chest recalling the absolute strike Naruto gave him. Tsunade chuckled loaded with mirth and offered, "A kicker huh?" Jiraiya grumbled and nodded then muttered, "Stupid Gaki." Tsunade chuckles whilst putting the clipboard down and announced, "Well, either way we're done here. Take it easy on the arm for a bit before you head out." Jiraiya nods and speaks up, "You, might want to check on that apprentice of yours." This caused the Senju to look at him with a raised brow, offering, "Oh." He sighs while nodding. "She fought him one-on-one, and he almost killed her. It must have shaken her up or something." Out at sea, under the calm moonlight, Naruto sat on the ship's prow, staring up at the sky above. Thanks to Inari, they are managing to leapfrog a lot of issues and are almost home free. Getting to Demon will solve all their issues in the short term. Hell, just getting to Sky Country will solve more than a few. He let out another heavy breath when his clansman dropped down beside him. Had he been less of a shinobi, he might have flinched at her abrupt arrival. Her stealth is truly unrivaled. Hinoka had watched Naruto for the last hour. It was clear that he knew those people they fought back in Wave, yet he treated them like another enemy and fought back regardless. It must have been tough. So when he let out that heavy sigh, she approached and sat beside him and opening up with, "Did you know them? The people back there?" Naruto continues his observations of the horizon, though he did nod once as he spoke monotone. "Yeah, my former classmates." Hinoka nodded, understanding his hesitation in admitting that but asks nonetheless, "Is that why?" "Yes," Naruto cut her off snipped, continuing briskly. "It isn't easy fighting people you once thought of as friends. So, I gave them a chance." He shrugged though Hinoka noticed the elevated pitch of his voice. It was slight, but she knew he must have hated it. Every minute of it. Only one thing came to mind and so she hugged him while whispering, "Thank you, Land of Sky." Naruto leading to the family through the streets of Helio, the port they landed in after their near 2-week journey, heading towards the inn and send along a message to his contact. The others had been quiet and avoided talking with the household leader, who's clearly troubled by the events that had transpired. Shuren was the only one who knew how to break him from his funk, either his mother's or auntie's. Sighing to himself, now knowing he had to act as mediator, the young Uzumaki asked, So, Papa, where are we going now? Naruto abruptly stopped, turning back to the group and the older members, and Shuren noticed him zoning back in, responding. Ah, Shuren, didn't I already tell you? Upon receiving a negative shake, Naruto smiled sheepishly while rubbing the back of his neck, commenting. Ah, right, my bad. Well, we are going to meet my contact. First we are going to find an inn, then the two ladies will keep watch whilst I go confront them. Can't we go with you? Ao asks, somewhat meekly while playing with her fingers. No, this is adult stuff that can't be done by children. Naruto explained sheepishly. Though, I might take Shuren with me. Nah, in a few years maybe. You're too young, yeah. He was speaking to himself at the end. His eyes lose focus for a moment before, nodding to himself and then regaining focus. So, we'll go market and enjoy the rest of the day before I check on my own mission nearby. That night in the back of the shadiest bar, in the darkest part of the town, Naruto sat alone with a cold beer of the local speciality, unknowingly to the general population he was speaking with his new occupant. Ino asking casually. So, Naruto, how long have you been working solo? Does it matter, Ino? You may be sitting shotgun for now, but this doesn't change the fact that you are still on thin ice. Naruto's response was equally cold as it was clipped. Kurama's voice came next. No need to be so hostile, Kit, I'll keep watch over our guest. Just focus on getting my grand kid home. Right, not like I can do anything in here. Can't even look through your memories. Ino sighed and Naruto could easily picture the blonde's pout, and ignored it with practice ease. A new voice caught his attention. My lord, he glancing up to see a woman who could be mistaken as the bar maidener, in Ino's words, a hooker. Naruto ignored his mental prisoner for now and offered a smile as he offered. Gela, the hazel-haired woman with an hourglass figure, that his new passenger was certainly not jealous of, sat down with her equally brown eyes locked onto his blue and a level of professionalism settled in. Gela reported firmly. Sir, my report is as follows. The Ebony Knights have retreated from the area to the north, having suffered casualties from a skirmish with suspected remnants of Sky Shinobi. That can't be good, Naruto murmurs, staring into his cup. Gela continued her report dutifully. We have been trying to infiltrate and find out what it, but until then. Go about it slowly and steadily. Don't rush it, Naruto instructed, looking directly into her unnaturally alluring eyes, and added. I'll be able to strike in a few months probably. A few months. Yeah, he nodded calmly though he took a sip of his beer before replying. I have to escort my group back home. You're going home? Yes. He takes a deep swing from the beer before him. Well, I shall inform Milady of your imminent arrival. Gela states with a bow, her sizable chest jiggled enticingly and her smile was purely sultry, unrelentingly tantalizing for any normal man. Matching her smile himself, Naruto downing his beer casually before placing it down and meeting her ever-sultry hazel eyes head-on and without affecting him, then offered. Thanks. Keep in touch. As he places a healthy amount of Ryo upon the desk as he arose from his seat. We'll take the direct route. Watch our backs, ya. It'll be a pleasure to be working with you, Naruto-sama. Gela reported softly, her voice a soothing melody and coated on a sweet undertone that caused a gagging from the blonde within, though he was unaffected by her smooth voice or naturally alluring scent. As Naruto strolled away, he glanced back over his shoulder at her and replied. Same to you, Gela-chan, though keep an eye out for me. She smiled and waved him off. Hidden leaf. Jiraiya appears within the Hokage's office and before she could speak up he does so. I need a team, retrieval focused, I know where he's going and if we leave in the next hour, I can get us there before he does. Anbu. 10 minutes later. Thank you for the prompt arrival. Tsunade spoke up to the shinobi teams before her. Team 9, Team 10, save for Ino, whose body is running on life support as her mind has yet to return, along with the remaining 2 members of the defunct Team 7. She completed her announcement. Jiraiya has located Naruto's destination and plans to ambush him before he gets there. Shouldn't we bring more shinobi? Shikamaru began while glancing at those gathered. Based on what we saw in Wave, we don't have the time nor means for any more than this. Tsunade explained before pausing and clicking her fingers. He announced, "Actually, I will send our premier swordsman with you and will join you for this mission." Kakashi offered a casual glance to the corner, noticing the stiffening in the shadow of said corner, Tsunade continuing. "Between them and Tenten, his swordsmanship should be a null factor. Kakashi should be able to neutralize his ninjutsu and counter with genjutsu. The rest of us?" Neji questioned with a raised brow, not understanding his place in this propst formation. "After he is subdued, secure his party and escort them back here. No harm is to come to them." Tsunade orders earning nods, though she continued. "Oh, a word of warning though, the Uzumaki solid chakra manipulation." This caused many to stiffen, recalling the display from the last encounter. Tsunade maintained her briefing posture. "The woman if the clan are far more adept at using it. It is incredibly rare for men of the clan to awaken it. As it chakra-based, do not expect anything less than an A-rank stone wall to block them." She rose her hand to forestall the Hyuga, turning to him. "Your revolving heaven will not block them." Many Hyuga have made the mistake of assuming to the contrary. Neji nods once. "Understood, Lady Hokage." Tsunade finished the briefing. "Meet Jiraiya at the East Gate in 10 minutes. He will be squadron leader of this mission." Dismissed. As soon as they all left she continued. "Cat, you are dismissed. Meet your former captain as a Jonin." The shadow vanishes to partake in this retrieval mission. A deep sigh escaped the aged leader's lips as she pulls out the sake bottle from her bottom drawer. Tsunade muttered. "Even when you aren't here, damn Gaki. Land of Forest. 5 days later. Just within the border of forest, from the land of birds, Naruto had created another safe house for the family. Perhaps safe house is a bit of a stretch, as it was starting to look more like a holiday home by the day. Naruto and Shuren's mood have both improved the closer to home they've gotten, which has inadvertently improved the mood of the others. Not wanting to burden the others with the continuous pressure of traveling, it was decided to make another base. At least that is what Naruto told everyone, but in actuality, he had received word from his own contacts that one of his outsourced associates may have let slip where he was heading. Said associate has been punished and demoted, but that also means that his network had gone into full lockdown after confirming that yes, Jiraiya of the Toads has caught wind of their suspected destination. In a note he received a day ago, it was confirmed that he was spotted the land of vegetable with a group of leaf shinobi with him. He thought perhaps he could cut through marsh, but their ninja would no doubt be troublesome and cause a big stink about his intrusion. So what if he had basically destroyed half their village? They shouldn't have launched those raids against his home in Demon. He shelved the idea for now. After the initial construction of the home, he and Hinoka put up the permanent cloaking seals and he input the nature chakra to shield the whole place from prying eyes. The only problem was that another sage was searching for him and would no doubt notice the slight increase in nature around the house. This limited his options. He will have to fight and throw off their trail. Turning from the window overlooking the forest out ahead of the hideout, Naruto confronts his family with a stern visage, but a tired sigh slipped his lips. "Look, we have more enemies looking for us. Can't we just hide like last time?" Iowa asks, looking so innocently it was barely resisted by the veteran shinobi swordsman at the front. Naruto sighing again, running his hand down his face, muffling himself before replying. "No, unfortunately. Our enemy this time is a sage like me. He'll be able to pinpoint me, and this place, the closer he gets. So I will be confronting them away from here." "But Dad, Ni-san. Naruto. Silence. Naruto called out and all fall flat as he sighs tiredly, hands eventually landing on his hips, before he began explaining further. Firstly, before you all cry out trying to help, let me remind you all of a few things. Naruto looks to his son and adding, Shuren. You and your friends are getting better, I will not deny, but none of you can handle Jonin-level opponents. Genin perhaps but not combat-tested Chunin and definitely not experienced Jonin. That shut down all the kids. Naruto smiled softly at them. Besides, I need you to ensure that everyone gets home. In worst case, Shuren swallowed very heavily, at the prospect of leaving his daddy behind alone. Though, he needed to be strong, so responded calmly. Okay, Daddy, I won't let you down. Naruto turned to the new mother, speaking up firmly. Kyoto, similar reason. You and your daughter are vulnerable. She needs you more than me. You and Hinoka are the kids' final line of defense for the kids. I can trust you with that, yes. Kyoto sighs and nods, her daughter sleeping blissfully in Armit Current. I will, Ni-san. Hinoka, Naruto says before looking to said woman who was semi-glaring at him, continuing on. If the leaf get a hold of you. He trailed off and she recoiled as if hit, before meekly nodding. Naruto sighs again, he's been doing that a lot without his wife around to calm his fraying nerves. She always kept him in task, straight and narrow, but without her guiding influence and care. He felt lost, unsure if he was doing the right thing. He only hoped this went to plan. Praise the log this all goes well. Random forest clearing. It took 4 days of scouting with toads and sage chakra to locate the elusive blonde. The Leaf team soon found that Naruto had been avoiding the towns and villages as no one had seen him or his group. Jiraiya had to call on his toads and had stumbled across what he assumed was a forward scouting clone that dispelled as soon as it noticed that he had been spotted. With a direction now the team moved swiftly, with over a dozen of encounters with more scouts and led them on a wild goose chase around the land of forest near the border of marsh, where they located the real one. They landed at the edge of the clearing and immediately recognized that he had led them there and was indeed expecting them. He was alone, which was a bad omen. There was nothing they could use against him as it was clear that this Naruto would strike to kill if forced. Unwarranted return to his former village was clearly a reason to fight full out. The lack of his party suggests that he will not be hampered with their defense and allow his usage of his heavier attacks. Standing from his meditative position, black katana that lay across his lap was now held in his left hand. Naruto kept his eyes closed, having monitored the Leaf team's progress to get to him. His shadow clones had a field day running rings around them, occasionally leading them into traps, doubling back on themselves, and generally being a nuisance. As much as he's grown, he's still a prankster at heart, and seeing their frustration upon realizing it was another clone was priceless. He's also managed to figure out the team's dynamics, habits, capabilities, and temperament. All vital in this coming clash. He knows of their abilities, yet his own remains largely unknown. He's going to have to thank his darling wife for beating the info game into his head. Better get this started. On the exhale of his deep breath, he calls out. Standing there is not going to change the outcome. They all stiffen. His sensory ability was never that good. Shikamaru sighed out, moving forward. Troublesome. Yugao spoke up next, stepping into the clearing. It was the clones, right? Yes. Yugao. Naruto responds flatly, eyes still closed and pointedly ignoring her tightening stance. He takes another deep breath before continuing. So, we have 2 swordsmen acting as vanguard. No doubt Shikamaru is sitting back to analyze with Neji. Kakashi will be starting as rear support for analysis, perhaps with a side of genjutsu, but will await the word to strike. The others are cannon fodder for distraction or rescue, with the Toad Sage slicking in the shadows ready to subdue me when I get fully invested into the fight. Am I wrong? Unusually insightful of you. Shikamaru Nara commented dryly, more than a little unnerved by the sight of this forward-thinking friend. Troublesome blondes, am I right? Naruto chuckles and hearing the tut breaks into a grin briefly, then saying. Now then, shall we begin? Sakura speaks up now, hoping to break through to her knucklehead. Why are you fighting us, Naruto? We just wanted to bring you back. Finish that sentence, Haruno, and I'll gut you like a fish. Naruto growls coldly, despite the angry rant in his head from another troublesome blonde. As the wind blows his longer locks around, he takes up a stance that causes Yugao to pale. He continued as his tone and face fall flat. You all know squat about that hellhole you call a village. I know your intentions and the lengths you intend to go to accomplish it. Naruto. You are being rather dramatic. Naruto cut in over his former Jonin leader. He was never a teacher. Come at me with the intent to kill and pray to the log for mercy, as I won't be showing any. Just then, Jiraiya comes blasting into the clearing, having been kicked in by a shadow clone, and a sword sliced through his position only being replaced with a diced log just before impact. The kindling landing was the signal to start with Yugao and Tenten immediately charging forward and clashing with the two Narutos, blade against blade in a stunning display of sparks and steel. The duel was quick to escalate as the speed and acrobatics increased, yet only the elite among the shinobi present knew was that Naruto was not only holding his own, but also pushing them back. Jiraiya abruptly lands beside Kakashi. The cut on his shoulder leading down towards his chest showed all that he was saved by his mesh undershirt as he muttered lowly. Damn, Gaki almost got me. How did he find you? Kakashi questioned, not taking his eyes off his former student, who seemed to be slowly speeding up, already reaching mid-Jonin level speed. He finally lifted his headband now, as to provide support and memorize his former student's movements. Jiraiya wore a tight frown, arms crossed. Sage mode, if I had to guess. Just got hit by a foot that felt like Gamabunta's tongue had just slapped me. Shikamaru speaking up next, overhearing the soft talk from the side, eyes sharp as he knelt down. Probably why he hasn't opened his eyes yet. Jiraiya offered a grunt in agreement as that made sense. Kakashi responds with a tight sigh. Can't get him with genjutsu either. He's rendered me useless from here. Naruto sidesteps another thrust from Yugao, who spins and responds with a horizontal slash that was parried by the blonde, and had to take a step back to absorb the kick that still knocked her off balance as he followed up with an overhead slam that forced her to leap aside. The chakra slash that followed from the move, however, flowed past the Anbu, and were it not for the lightning reflexes honed by Might Guy, Tenten wouldn't have only gotten off with a deep cut across her forearm. Before the Kunoichi of Team 9 could regain herself though, the Naruto clone pounced on her unbalanced stance and knocked around her sword. With her defense had been broken, fear setting in once more, Tenten noticed that she was losing ground and he was preparing for the final strike. Thankfully, the clone was interrupted and popped by a blindside strike from Neji. With tears in her eyes, Tenten was about to thank him for the save when he began to rotate on the spot. Neji announces briskly. Revolving heaven. Several dozen shuriken are parried, shot off in many random directions and saved the duo from injury. However, just as he comes to a stop, another Naruto clone appears within sword range, already mid-swing only for a second clone to land and intercept it as they clash swords. The clashing two were a strange sight, with the first clone, that was the one intercepted, noticing the corruption of the second immediately and glared at it. A kunai suddenly popped the first clone, that allowed the second to glance back at them with a familiar smirk and voice. Sorry I'm late, guys. Tenten and Neji observed the clone warily for a moment before Tenten spoke hesitantly. Ino, right. The corrupted Naruto clone nodded, its teal eyes gleaming in mirth as it spoke with the Yamanaka's voice. Yeah, though, controlling this thing is really. It warpedly went poof before them, Both suspected a dispel command to be most likely, yet a scream and the sound of 1,000 birds caught both Team 9 members' attention briefly. They brought back to their own situation when 2 more Naruto clones dropped down before them with swords already drawn. Tenten Swallows heard and glanced at her teammate while whispering, "Ah, this is endless." Yugao slash was redirected by Naruto mid-blade before he flicked the top down and caught her shoulder down to her side, forcing her back. He did not let up, jumping after her with a side slash. She blocked it, but due to the shoulder injury, she lost leverage pretty quickly and lost ground along with her stance. Immediately afterwards, she received a direct roundhouse kick to the chest and sent flying back, screaming as she had no doubt broken something. Just before he could pursue, the sound of 1,000 birds, echoing off the trees, rang out loudly, and again, Naruto proves his defensive might when his katana clashed with his former squad leader's famous lightning-cutting blade. He had not even budged so much as a nanometer in response to the clash. A blast of lightning exploded out upon impact, dancing around the 2 who remained in place. Both those in the center remained unharmed, and untouched by the arcing lightning strikes. Naruto took a quick situation check, and surely enough, Haruno was healing the injured Yugao, Choji protecting them, Neji and Tenten were busy dealing with clones. More like trying not to die. Jiraiya was slinking around again, though those traps are keeping him busy. Shikamaru has been trying to keep track of all the clones but is having trouble, and obviously Kakashi was trying to break through his sword. He would snort if it wasn't so stupid. Looking back to his current opponent, Naruto asks, "Huh, did you say something?" Everyone glanced over at that, disbelieving someone just pulled that on Kakashi, who himself was surprised that he got caught by his own move. Naruto though, and his clones, capitalized on their disbelief, as one would expect of a ninja. The 2 over by Tenten and Neji both channeled chakra into their blades, and slashed down, with neither reacting in time, but Neji did push Tenten clear of the attack at her, loosing his arm in the process. One clone up in the trees flung 2 kunai directly at Shikamaru, though one was intercepted by a corrupted Ino clone, meaning the Nara only took a kunai to the thigh, causing him to scream out in pain. Were it not for Yugao's countless years of experience, Sakura would have taken 2 kunai to the back and a third to the lower spine, with her sword quick draw. Choji deflected the others without injury but turned to Shikamaru upon his pained cry. Kakashi had detected all of this over the 5 seconds after his former student's question as their chakra strikes continued to clash, and was wide-eyed at his sensei's son's ability to multitask, and multi-strike, and ambush using his famed shadow clones so well. He had to break through to his former student, convince him to come back with them now before he was ordered to eliminate him due to him becoming a threat to the village. Kakashi speaks with an undertone of a plea. "Naruto. Please just come back home to the village. You will no doubt be welcomed with open arms, and as you have proven. This isn't something so flimsy as to prove myself, Hitaki. This is me protecting my precious people." Naruto growls, his wind chakra asserting itself now, giving a razor-edge quality to his ode katana, forcing Kakashi to leap back, his lightning fizzling out. Naruto then takes a very menacing step forward, glare Sub-Zero, as he declared. "Till I draw my last breath, I will stand against any who seek their ruin." Sakura, who was tending to Neji, snaps up at that and turns back to face her teammate, in her mind at least, yelling back at him while she pants. "Aren't we your precious people? What about us?" Yet a calm seemed to settle upon her declaration. Kakashi moved beside Choji and Yugao in a defensive formation. Naruto's hair covers his face, body trembling in absolute fury at the naivety on display. A deep, feral growl turning to a menacing snarl that came from the blonde as his chakra began to become visible around him as he spoke slowly. "You persecuted me when I lived among you, and now, you hunt my children. And then have the audacity to vow to drag me back to that hellscape. Naruto was absolutely furious right now. An abrupt blast of chakra knocked everyone back, many only now noticing his additional markings reminiscent of the beast he contained. Black lines surround his eyelids, reaching back towards his ears but not reaching. Whisker marks thicken, deepen, and darken along with his lips whilst his canines lengthen. Finally his eyes finally opened for the first time, revealing pale orange slit eyes, with a sharpened gaze upon his foes as if a predator eyeing up their prey. Breathing softly and steadily, helping to balance out his reaction to the surge of natural chakra within his coils. Shikamaru grew very nervous now at the sight of this powered-up version of the monster that had been dominating them up until now. Troublesome. This was insanely troublesome. Taking a breath, he looks at Asuke, the only other sage he knew. Please tell me that. Jiraiya grew incredibly serious at the sight before him. The scorch marks and the numerous cuts from expertly prepared traps covered his frame. No, I don't feel any malice. Tenten murmured lowly, her disbelief evident in her tone. Impossible, this has to be. Naruto's voice was painfully clear, filled with a silent rage yet carried an undertone of sorrow. I warned you to leave me and mine alone. I am sorry, but you won't be returning home. Taking up his black sword's handle with both hands as he takes up a new stance and continued. I have to send you away, with a message to not approach those I hold dear. Slowly the sword moved up to Naruto's eye level, on his right side, held horizontally as he spoke slowly while crouching slightly, preparing to strike. Kitsune Art, Four-Claw Strike. He vanished from sight briefly, just before there was a call of summoning. A very loud clang echoed off the trees. 4 armored shield toads are forced back across the clearing, sliding in their stances behind their now sliced shields, and stopped before the leaf shinobi. Made it. Jiraiya called out, landing behind them with a heavy sigh, his shoulders occupied by the 2 great toad elders. The purple-haired toad suddenly bellowed. A sage. Since when did the kitsune have sages? Since now, it seems, the gray-haired, green-skinned toad replied softly with a heavy sigh out as he prepared for a heavy battle with nature chakra. A new arrival drops in, Ino Yamanaka, having transformed one of Naruto's clones, for ease of identification. Guys. Naruto has about half a dozen clones nearby. Shikamaru glances to her briefly, offering a cautious, Ino. Kinda. I've seized control of this shadow clone, Ino explained with a grin but winced a moment later, explaining swiftly. I'm fighting against his dispel command. Not sure how long I can hold this though. Shikamaru nods while glancing around, though his mind wasn't as sharp as always thanks to the kunai still embedded in his thigh. Sakura hasn't gotten to him yet, so he's left it until she's free. He finally relays his plan. We have to find those clones and eliminate them. In case we have to withdraw. Then, abruptly, a stone wall shot up, created by Kakashi in front of Shikamaru, Ino, and 3 kunai-tipped chains punch through and stop less than a dozen centimeters from Kakashi's flak jacket, before fading away into chakra smoke. Kakashi glancing back, he saw that Yugao had done the same, protecting Sakura's back again. He then speaks up. We need to. Jiraiya cut the Hitaki off, going through hand signs, saying. I'll hold him at bay, you all focus on. He is interrupted by their current enemy calling out. Summoning jutsu. Was heard in a pack of 8 kitsune, all 4 tails, dull white and muted orange markings around their faces, down their spines toward their tail tips. They all stood at a similar size to Akamaru, though wore uniformed leather jackets. As they appeared and the Leaf team gulped, with even the Toad Sage unsure about this. Jiraiya whispered loudly. This might be a problem. We should call Hero Boy, and Tachu Boy. Jiraiya shakes his head, responding to Pa. Then he'll no doubt escalate too, and we do not know who the bosses of the kitsune are, do we? The Leaf side watches Naruto pets one who nuzzled his hand, staring into their eyes before he looks up, and the entire pack follows his gaze, and upon his growl, they growl with him. Speaking the fox variant of canine, Naruto ordered, "Take them out." They all let out a small yip, before taking a pouncing stance, all grinning like their boss was known for. Naruto too took up his earlier stance, and upon his narrowed eyes, the Leaf team prepared the best they could. Upon Naruto's tongue click, they pounced. Toad Song. The two Toad sages bellow out a genjutsu that halted the group in their tracks, a pulse from Naruto freeing them and the foxes pounce, in two waves. The shield toads leap into action, batting away the first wave of attackers, unfortunately not the flanking set that tore into the toads before they could dispel. The only things to return were the shreds of torn meat. None expected that speed, nor coordination, as it was clear they expected the toads to intercept, so flanked them and struck when exposed. Crafty. The half-transformed Jiraiya leapt clear of the follow-up strike from the multi-tailed foxes, he growled. "Damn it," as he went through hand signs to call in toad reinforcements when, "Above you," was called out and the sage snapped up and only narrowly caught the downward swing of the sword. The force, however, paired with a lack of leverage due to his airborne state, forced the man down into the path of a spinning kitsune that tail slams him down into a new crater. Naruto lands beside his hunter pack's second in command, Yui, who had been the slammer of the Toad Sage. He ran his hand absent-mindedly between her raised ears, earning a low purr from the white-furred vixen. The familiar sound of 1,000 birds chirping, and the glow through the smoke tells them the next move. Speaking kitsune, Naruto orders her. "Hold them down, spread out." Yui glances to him, before chirping and vanishing using pure speed. Rikari. A lightning blade from the Sharingan-wielding Jonin, rushed through the smoke that clung to the battered Jonin's form. It was soon met, head-on by Naruto's black katana, but failed to pierce or break it, again. Kakashi glared fiercely at the blade his student was wielding. Impossible. But that was short-lived as Naruto planted his boot in the mon's chest, his soon-to-be infamous kick making an appearance, and the cracking of his ribs barely heard over the chirping. The force of impact of Naruto's excuse of a kick, fully blasted back the Jonin, and forcing him into the tree behind Shikamaru, slumped over dazed. Naruto was then flanked by Neji, despite being down to one functional arm. 8 trigram, 32 palms. Naruto could respect Neji's tenacity, on any other day, any other occasion, but right now it was just pissing him off. Thus, out comes the sage arts he and his partners have been developing. Kitsune art, Twin Claw. A single swipe turned into 2, forcing Neji to leap back. Though Tenten and Yugao appeared next, straight through an opening presented by the Kitsune, Naruto takes up stance while announcing. Kitsune art, Full Moon. This slash, sliced through their swords, their vests, and their upper chest, near their necks, barely avoiding the decapitation. As they both leapt clear, blood pouring from their wounds, Naruto appeared at Yugao's back, his whispered words heard by only her. "I'm sorry, cat." The black blade punches through, erupting from her stomach, and she gasps, but is pinned to Naruto's frame as he supports her up. The two were now cheek to cheek, as he held her up. His words came out thick, loaded with guilt and remorse. You were one of the people I never wished to fight. To inflict harm onto." Despite the situation, Yugao broke a smile as she whispered. You know who I am." "I do, cat," Naruto whispered back, and she nods minutely, as he continued. I should thank you for trying your best to protect me all those years ago. I recently came across another Azuki. I wanted to train her to be the best swordswoman, and have you two meet someday." They both ignored the blue flames in the background, as Yugao began to tear up as she nods once and whispering. "Good." Naruto nods back, a soft whisper. "I really wish you didn't come." The sorrow was thicker than before, but she cracked a smile. "Duty. He nods once, speaking below a breath into her ear again. I know. After all, protecting what I have left is my duty too. Yugao actually smiled at that, but lacked the strength to do much more than that, blood leaking from her mouth, though still heard his final words to her. Rest now, Yugao Azuki. You have served well. He slowly removing his blade and gently placing her down, shutting her eyes carefully. Choji stumped hard, forcing the three kitsune to scatter. A blue flame fired, though the Akamaiki batted the ball away, spinning his staff and catching the lunging one on its end, swinging it off. Another chomped down on his right leg, earning a grunt from the large man, though as he was distracted, another chomped on his opposite arm. Stomping hard again, got rid of the one on his leg, forcing it to return. His staff twirled around and deflected another lunging kitsune, though it almost yanked it free, and forced him off balance briefly, which is when Yui appeared, jumping onto and then using his back as a springboard, forcing him to stumble heavily forward. The vixen herself performed several flips while charging her fire blast, so when she was facing the tank of the Leaf team again, upside down, she unleashed her full might upon him. Choji, seeing the encroaching blue fireball, and knowing his team was at his back, held true to his clan's honor and with his staff, held his ground. Using his full might, he swung his staff with enough force to break the sound barrier and smack the ball clear of his friends. The deflection caused the attack to splash down near both Naruto and a few more of his kitsune. They quick returned, but Naruto was forced substitute himself with a log. The stress of the high speed of his swing, and force put in it, the still clinging kitsune managed to tear the arm off partially, though Choji soon smashed his fist into its face, forcing its dispel. Going down to a knee, Choji was panting and wheezing, looking down at his hanging arm, bleeding profusely. Footsteps ahead of him drew his eyes up to the kitsune who launched the attack. They stared at one another for a solid 10 seconds. To his surprise, she bowed her head. It took him a moment before he too bowed back. She turned back and left after that, returning to her pack leader's side. The fight wasn't over yet. Kakashi kicked off the kitsune, forcing them back again. Looking around, his entire force was crippled. Neji was down. Yugao too. Tenten was pinned, beneath two foxes with their flames glowing within their maw. Sakura was trying to keep another from the wounded Choji, clutching his blooded left arm that was hanging on by a few tendons from bite marks on his bicep. His armor shredded from numerous deep scratches. The last Hitaki slid through the dirt, slowing down beside Shikamaru, who was completely frazzled, his Jonin vest scorched and smoldering, glaring at the kitsune who tried to fry him. The last Hitaki announces briskly, "We are losing." It managed to break the Nara from his glaring match, the kitsune sticking out its tongue at him in response. Shikamaru glanced at the frazzled Kakashi, speaking rather clipped. "No shit. We've lost too. Jiraiya is the only thing keeping Naruto at bay, and that is only just barely." The former Anbu captain nods in understanding, Kakashi offering, "We have to retreat." Shikamaru sighed, shaking his head before gesturing up to the tree line. "We can't, look." The senior, silver-haired Jonin followed the gesture and paled. There were numerous shadow clones that lined the entire clearing with swords out and staring blankly at those within. Kakashi mutters beneath his escaping breath, "Well shit. Sage art, big ball Rasengan." Jiraiya roared until it was cleanly sliced through, yet again causing him to mutter, "Huh." Before a powerful foot cracked through his shell of defense, blood spluttered out from his mouth from the hit as he was sent flying. Jiraiya was really getting annoyed by those damn kicks the Gaki keeps using. After skipping like a stone twice, Jiraiya slides to a stop before he eventually gets up as he takes a deep hard breath. Glancing around, he sees the team is on the cusp of defeat. He glances at his fellow sage, who is glaring back at him, and takes a full deep exaggerated breath, rising to his feet, allowing the natural energy to flow through his entire form briefly, before letting out a beefy roar. hand signs blazing. The toads accompanying him follow his example. Suspecting danger, Naruto clicks his tongue thrice and the remaining 4 kitsune all leap clear of the leaf team, to land beside their pack leader, and Naruto returns his blade to his back before going through his own hand signs. The kitsune channeling chakra to their lungs in reaction to their leader's hand signs. Jiraiya finishes first, bellowing out in unison. Sage Art, Toad Oil Blast. The 3 toad-aligned call out, a stream of flammable toad oil merging with the flames of the summoner, enhanced by the second Toad Elder's winds that began turning even the air to ash. Naruto smirks, glad they held the numbers advantage as he lands on his final hand sign, breathing in, his kitsune following suit. Sage Art, Kitsune Blazing Wind. Letting out a concentrated stream of wind, the 2 inner kitsune releasing blue flames that lightened near enough to white as the 2 outer canines' winds swell the narrow beam into a blast that glasses the air itself, burning off the ground it passes over and leaving nothing but magma in its wake. When the 2 techniques clash, the air surrounding the clearing vacates and creates a temporary vacuum. No sound, just heat, as if the sun itself was present in the clearing. The grass evaporated, the earth burnt, then scorched, and eventually turned to glass. The leaf team was struggling to breathe, the heat was unbearable, but at the same time, their entire lives were resting on Jiraiya right now. Kakashi and Shikamaru noticed that the clones were no longer blocking the path. In the center of the clearing, it didn't last long for the winner to be decided as the Kitsune Sage attack began to push the toads back. Their sheer numbers allows for much more power at less of an individual cost. A full 30 seconds of losing ground gradually, and the larger lung capacity of Naruto won out, but before Jiraiya could fully loose, he pulses his chakra causing both attacks to implode. The resulting explosion knocked all parties back, the shadow clones manning the perimeter were dispelled, allowing the Leaf team to make a rapid, strategic retreat. They had lost. Naruto did not get back up from the knockback of that last attack. He was panting and sweating, tears running down his face. His partners all gathered around him, whining and trying to comfort their leader, understanding that fighting for your family against your old friends is never easy, and yet, again, they came for him. Yui was resting by his head, licking his tears softly. Why did they keep forcing his hand? Why can't they just leave him alone? He said no, damn it. Fist smashing down against the scorched gravel. With eyes of lead, Naruto glances down over the empty, ashen clearing, with a whisper. Please, for all our sakes, don't come back, please. His final words before losing the fight to stay conscious from the emotional strain he has been under. Naruto was unaware that his control had slipped, and Ino was able to watch his breakdown as she slipped away, finally released from her captivity. It would take several days for her to return to her body. Her last view of her former friend was a broken husk of a boy curled up with his fox allies encircling him, trying to comfort his breaking soul. A lost soul desperately trying to keep himself together for the benefit of others, as always. In another clearing, Yugao opens her eyes, unbelieving that she was still in the land of the living. Looking around, she sees her team beaten and battered but alive. Jiraiya was unconscious, chakra exhaustion no doubt. Neji had lost an arm, Choji might follow him in armlessness. Kakashi was breathing heavy, a few broken ribs most likely from those powerful kicks. Tenten was sleeping off the damage she took. Shikamaru took the least damage and was on watch. Sakura must be exhausted. Sitting up, her abdomen pain rippled across her body, forcing a wince from her lips, gaining the Nara's attention, who whispered towards her. You should keep resting. We don't know if he'll chase us. Yugao didn't miss a beat in her response, laced with steel that brokered no argument. He won't. Shikamaru observed the sword-wielding Jonin for a moment, before asking, what makes you? She cut him off, as she finally propped herself against a nearby tree, arm crossed her injury, hand glowing a faint green. He hesitated. Constantly at that. He didn't want to fight. This whole thing was a ruse, a message to force us to leave. She glances up to the Nara, a hollow smile, and offering further. If he wanted to, we wouldn't have escaped. We'd all be dead, I know that much, as he purposely missed my vitals. Shikamaru looked back to observe the trees around them, the green bark creating a weird sight for a leaf ninja, though he did respond lowly. I see, do you think they'll let him be now? Doubt it. Yugao snorted, that earned her a wince, as she takes a deep breath before continuing to work on her injury. Quite the opposite, in fact. If we keep pushing, we'll back him in a corner again. And he'll be forced to simply go for the kill. Shikamaru nodding at that, hoping that this will be the end of it. Naruto's mindscape. The moon hang just above the horizon over the still ocean, Naruto laying out cold on the white beach as his tenant stands above him and sighs hard, muttering. You don't need to burden yourself so much, little brother. Lifting the still form of his container-turned brother-in-arm, back into the house, moving up the stairs before eventually reaching and placing him in the bed within his own room. It was across the hall from the fox's own. It's okay to ask for help. I know your mate isn't around, but you aren't alone. Kurama ruffles the blonde locks with a soft smile, a gentle smile as he tucks Naruto in, like he's done 1,000 times before. The smile did not last as he turned back to the exit, the red slit eyes glow vibrantly as he growls lowly. Allow me to relieve you of this burden. Back in the forest, Naruto awakes, but his eyes a blood red and the foxes protecting him notice the shift immediately. A puff of smoke and a fox the size of a dire wolf appeared in Naruto's place, nine tails waving lazily in the darkening of the forest. A very low growl from the depths of his throat was soon harmonized with his fellow kitsune. Yui especially was bloodthirsty. Kurama steps clear of the small hunting pack, he glances back at them briefly as they all nod to him, and he nods back before the 5 kitsune charge into the underbrush, not even the wind hearing them pass. The hunt was now on. Forest clearing. Kakashi snapped awake, jolting up, and pulled a kunai, taking up a defensive stance. This startled the others into action, though only Sakura, Tenten, and Shikamaru were capable of fighting in any capacity. Jiraiya was awake but still rather low on chakra, not having fully recovered yet. The Toad Sage asked, "What is it?" Kakashi whispered to them, his eyes darting side to side while whispering. Something is coming. He was resisting the urge to lift his headband. He was down to a quarter chakra, but it seemed his hands were tied here. Swallowing a soldier pill, then a chakra pill, he promptly went through hand signs. Summoning. A puff of smoke signaled reinforcements. Kakashi began. Pakun. But paused upon noticing the low growling of his entire pack. All of them were tracking something they couldn't see, even the normally relaxed pug was visibly tense. A tense minute passes, before Pakun whispers, "Kakashi, you are aware you're being hunted right now, yes?" Kakashi nods once, frame coiled and tense. Figured something like that, yes. This forest is both our best defense and greatest weakness. Though, I sensed a shift in the wind, called you guys. Pakun glances to him with a rare dog side eye. We need to move. Kakashi shook his head, responding calmly, but he was very clearly tense. We can't. Too many wounded. Sakura's been working overtime too. A loud high-pitched screech was heard, cutting him off and causing hairs to stand on ends. Silence for a long time. Pakun growls lowly, so lowly that if Kakashi hadn't had his enhanced hearing he would have missed it. This isn't good. The pack of dogs spread out in a perimeter around the injured camp of Leaf Shinobi, growling whilst tracking something in the enclosing darkness. With nervous frayed beyond anything recognizable, Shikamaru asks on behalf of the uninformed. Mind telling us what we're dealing with? He's staring out at the tall green-barked trees that made up the forest. The dogs began speaking among themselves. 3, no, I smell 5. I smell 7. I only have 1. I got 6. They've found us. The dogs chatted among themselves, something flickered on the edge of their perception, and all heads snapped there, but nothing was seen. More feral growling came from the dark, barking followed shortly, and the tension continued to grow as the ninjas felt the pressure. Then everything just went silent. A cold sweat ran down Tenten's neck. A quick glance back shows Shikamaru too unnerved to an insane degree, and it only heightened as it seemed even the trees would want to hear and fell silent. She gulped. She heard Shikamaru slow his breathing. The tension seemed to have awoken the others, but none dared move or make a sound. A deep growl from above. Eyes snapped up, and the eyes of Kitsune all over the forest's trees with their maws down, shit, was heard echoing through the camp. Yo! Spoke a red one. Suddenly, Kakashi realized that this one beside him fanned out 9 tails and uttering K-Y-Q. Kurama's grin was the very definition of feral, though his response was as cool as the land of spring. Hitaki. The standoff was heavy as more and more foxes began to show up, encircling the group of shinobi, and the ninja dogs, who had closed the circle. Jiraiya pulled a trump card none knew he had, and abruptly Tsunade, Lady 5th Hokage herself, appeared via the 4th's protection platoon's Hirishin, Radio Namiyashi, Genma Shiranui, and Iwashi Tatami, appearing with her. A quick glance at the situation put the last Senju on edge. Her people were clearly beaten and heavily wounded in the middle of the clearing that was currently surrounded by several dozen foxes, kitsune. The said kitsune were clearly just waiting for some sort of command from. Tsunade's breath hitched upon seeing those vibrant red eyes, bright orange fur paired with 9 innocently swaying tails. KKQB. Her gaze hardened. The only way for the 9 tails to be here without her gaki is if. No, the fox chuckled, seeing their trail of thoughts as he stepped down from the tree he was on, with the hunter pack at his side, snarling and growling. Takun and his group snarl right back. However, the Kyuubi continued. My kit still lives, not for the lack of trying on your hunter's part. Tsunade steps forward, her 3 escorting Jonin at her side, as she asks. Then, how are you? That doesn't matter right now, the fox boss dismissed, plopping down on his haunches, his gaze flowing over the clearing, observing everything with his keen eyesight. Tsunade's eyes narrowed on the tailed beast, her glare cold. Oh, and do tell me what does. As I see it, you are holding my shinobi here against their will and. A deep, throaty growl from the almost 2-meter-tall kitsune, while sitting, elicited similar growls and bared teeth from the surrounding kitsune. Kurama spoke up lowly, my kid has served your pathetic village his entire life. I was sealed within him not even half an hour after his birth, keeping me and my power at bay ever since. This admission actually caught the Leaf forces by surprise, though the fox didn't care to acknowledge it. Kurama continued, yet for the bulk of this service, you all thought he was the greatest of the Biju, punishing the weak little kid who was too kind to retaliate. We would never. Sakura jumped in clearly without thinking of whom she was talking to, rising to her feet, fueled by anger at the insinuation. Konoha is a place to protect the children. Not. She fell on her butt from the sheer level of killing intent leveled upon her by the fox. Sakura was having trouble trying not to have a heart attack. Kyuubi roared at the pinkett. Naive little girl. Were you not one of the many who did my kid harm for little or no reason? Seeing the pest sufficiently subdued, the Biju turned back to the equally concerned Sanin. Speaking rather cordially compared to a second ago. Now then, on to why we haven't mauled you all to death already. Speaking so casually about mass slaughter put the bulk of the shinobi firmly within the primal fear category, as Kurama continued. You will call off your hunters. My kid is at his limit and does not wish to be forced to kill any of you. Although initially caught off guard, Tsunade recovered quickly and responded swiftly, he doesn't have to. She crosses her arms as her confidence began to return and allowing her to continue firmer. As long as he comes quietly, we can offer him his old position back and protection from those that seek to harm him or his family. The Kyuubi bawled out in laughter, genuine and hearty laughter, with the other kitsune and foxes following after their leader. A good few minutes later, the Ninetales finally composes himself again, speaking up in a wheeze, still recovering somewhat. Protection, huh? The Biju was suddenly engulfed in smoke and replaced by a goddess-made flesh, with flawlessly creamy white skin atop long, slender but muscled legs that lead up to nice, wide hips, a firm rear, moderate chest, and a perfect face decorated by 8 whisker-like markings, and bright reddish-orange hair reaching. She speaks up with a soft voice. What if I said you were the ones he needed protection from? Who? What? Tsunade muttered only for the woman to shrug, Kurama speaking airily, running her fingers through her luscious long straight hair while saying. Figured this would take a little explaining, best to do it human to human. No. You're the Kyuubi. Kakashi muttered, clearly speechless at the sight of the most powerful Biju standing among them as if mocking them. Kurama smirks, a very familiar foxy smirk, hands on hip while speaking slowly. Yes, I am a kitsune. Transformations is in our nature. Genma, Radio, and Iwashi glance to one another, and share a nod. This is so getting them so many free drinks. Tsunade whispered to herself. You look like a mix of my grandmother and cousin. But naturally the whole clearing heard. Kurama then shrugged, stating casually. Well, Mito was my first host and so I hold her in rather high esteem. She did subdue me alone after all. As for Kushina, she trailed off as if trying to find a diplomatic way to describe something but giving up halfway through with another shrug. Kurama gets back on subject. Anyway, I want you to leave my family alone. Tsunade snaps to and responds swiftly. Naruto belongs in the leaf with us, his precious people. I may not have known. So friends, this was episode 2 of this emotional and powerful story. If you enjoyed it,